So today I'm talking with Michael McBride. He is a creator, curious human, and I'm excited to talk to him today. He is the creator of Idea.soup. Is that how you
Yeah,
call it?
idea soup. Yeah,
Yeah,
idea soup. The dot is
ideas
silent.
Idea Soup, a prolific creator of videos online, both on TikTok and Instagram, and crazy amount of followers. We'll dive into that, but more curious about the starting origins of that and what drives you. But welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm super stoked to be on. Yeah, I'm really, really happy to be here.
So talk to me. So give people a sense of who we're talking to. You were a former strategy consultant. We share that in common. You're in the last year and a half, your life has kind of accidentally gone in a really interesting direction. What happened and where are we?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm definitely a bit of a kind of professional dilettante, and I've done all kinds of crazy different things over my life. But yeah, most recently I was working as a consultant specializing in data analytics, and then I started this little thing called Idea Soup, where I just started making these little short form videos on history and science and random stuff I was interested in, and that has just exploded in the last year and a half, and now I've got 500,000 followers on TikTok. I'm a full-time content creator, and that's just what I do. And so I kind of fell into it super accidentally. I started writing on Medium originally just because I was in the corporate world, was feeling very kind of uncreative, needed an outlet, and I just wanted to keep my thinking sharp more than anything else. So I started writing on Medium, did that for almost 2 years, started having some success on there, but I found that kind of a lot of my friends didn't a lot of a lot of my friends just don't read, right? I consider myself a pretty intellectual guy, but I've got a super diverse and varied friend group, and a lot of them are like, "Hey, these articles seem interesting, but like, I'm not going to sit there and read a 9 minute long article. I'm just not going to." And so yes, that's when I kind of said I want to do the same thing, but in video form, and I really went all in on short form from day one. My YouTube really is hardly anything at all. I started on Instagram, didn't get anywhere for a year, but I really believed that this like short form kind of bite sized entertainment would do well. And then I got on TikTok, and it just hit with people. And yeah, that's rest is history.
Yeah, I went back to your first video on Instagram and you said, I feel pretty darn ridiculous talking to my phone. And these are not going to be good videos, but hang in there. And I love that sentiment because that is really the right approach these days. Still, surprisingly, many young people want permission to do things, or they think they need to be perfect at something before they do it. Where does that drive or impulse come from?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really hard, and even for me, it was challenging at first. I think that one of the most challenging things for content creators that no one ever talks about is how ridiculous you feel taking it seriously at first. So right now, I do a lot of my stuff talking to my phone. I'll do a lot in public while I'm traveling, right? So I'll be traveling and at some historical landmark, and I'll Mount Rushmore or whatever, and I'll pull out my phone and I'll start talking to myself. And yeah, it still feels real ridiculous today, but at least there's this like, oh, he's a creator. He's got to do what he's got to do, right? He's got 500,000 followers. Of course, he's doing that. But when you're starting out and you have 10 followers, you kind of have to take it just as seriously and pour just as much of yourself into it if you want to succeed. So for me now to go and I don't know, buy a nice camera or this or that seems totally normal, but at first the people around you will be like, "That's so cringy. Like, why are you trying so hard?" Um, and so putting yourself in that place where you are vulnerable, really going all in on anything is a challenging place to be. And I think it's really, really tough for content creators that are just starting out. And so I think because of that, a lot of people half-ass it at first. Oh, I'm not serious about this. It's just a little side thing. Oh, I don't care about this because they want to
Yeah.
avoid that
Huh.
vulnerability that comes with going all in. And yeah, maybe I was able to look ridiculous. I have a little bit of background in theater when I was a kid, so maybe maybe some of that helped me out. I don't know. But yeah, it's just this like awful growing pain that you really have to get through. That I think every content creator goes through, and I certainly did.
Yeah, I think the switch for me was actually making, like, I went from writing online to sitting at a cafe, meeting somebody that resonated with what I wrote that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And before
Mm,
that, it was kind of I put these things out there publishing on LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn was the platform in 2014, 2015. And I felt
still is.
such
I think people sleep on LinkedIn, by the way, but I think it still has a tremendous amount of potential.
I just felt such shame putting things out there, but there was still that
Right.
voice that's like, I want to say these things. I feel like this is a different way of looking at things. Was that a
Right.
similar
And shame
drive for you?
and shame is the right word there. People never talk about creation is the most vulnerable act on the entire planet. You're putting yourself into the world and saying, "Please judge me," uh,
And they
and
will.
and they will. Oh, and they will. Trust me, they will. And yeah, and I think you're totally right. I think that early on, don't focus on numbers, focus on how much you're impacting each individual person, and then I also think like my advice for small people starting out is contextualize it historically. If you have a, a thousand followers, the ability to talk to 1,000 people, the ability for the average
It's
person to reach a
crazy.
thousand people is unprecedented in history, right? Like, 200 years ago, that would have been almost completely impossible. You'd have had to like own a newspaper, right, to reach 1,000 people. And now you can press a button and do it. So if you have an audience of 1,000 people, that's amazing, right? Even 100 is amazing. So, yeah, so I felt that, and yeah, you do need to just have this unrelenting drive of like, I have something to say, I have to keep saying it, and I want to keep getting better. Because the I'm sure the drop off after 3 months of creating is huge, right? Everyone goes in all full of piss and vinegar, but drops off pretty quickly.
Yeah, so what keeps you going? I know you've kind of tapped into a monetary angle, but you don't and some people get stuck, right? Because the algorithm might send them in a direction where they're creating stuff they actually despise. Like a lot of early Instagrammers I've met are in this state in which the algorithm has kind of steered them in a very weird direction, basically
Hmm.
showing their skin instead of their what they want to be showing, and it can be pretty terrible on the other side of that for those people. How are you conscious of those traps as you've kind of scaled and oriented towards this?
Yeah. So, what keeps me going? A unrelenting and bottomless need for attention. Uh, no, kidding. Yeah. I mean, what keeps me going is just like I just feel like I have something to say and I want to be listened to, and I enjoy making content. I think that with regards to getting into a trap, well, what's that psychological thing? I think it's called a Skinner box, where they would put pigeons in a box and these very simple systems of reward and punishment based on behavior, right? And it's like that is social media is very much a classical conditioning framework where the feedback is so visceral and so real. It is post performance, post performance, post performance. There's no ambiguity. If you're a journalist, right, 30 years ago, you don't have that. like
Right.
like you write an article, you don't know how many people read it, you don't know what they thought about it, you don't know how many of them liked it before, how many of them dropped off halfway through. And so your feedback cycles were long and much more qualitative. And so with it being so short and dynamic like that, I think that you said the algorithm pushes them in a certain way, but I think the algorithm shows people what they want to see. It's
Right.
most likely more so that they've trained their audiences. Trains the wrong word. Their audiences have become conditioned to expect a certain thing out of them.
Right.
And the fact is, you do get caught into a cycle where you're giving the audience more of what they want. And I heard someone say once, like, you remember that your social media profile it's not Netflix, it's a TV show. So if I click on The Office and Parks and Rec comes up, I'm going to be pissed off, right? And so to
Yeah.
some degree, it's like people come to you for a type of content, and you want to keep giving that to them. On the other hand, that is a trap, both because you have to keep scratching your own itch, and you will very quickly go crazy just making content that is consumable, people like, and also because I've seen a lot of content creators, I've seen a lot of early TikTokers death spiral because they have x number of million followers, but just no engagement anymore,
Hmm.
because essentially they kept doing the same thing. Their audience liked it. They gave them more of it. They gave them more of it. They gave them more of it. And as they were doing that, the context around them shifted. The competitive environment shifted. People got bored of it, whatever. And by the time they realized that their one trick was no longer working, it was too late. So I think it's always a balance between give people more of what they want and innovate and give them new things. Any business is like that, right? You
Yeah.
have to balance the kind of Microsoft, I want to click on Outlook and get Outlook, versus the Apple, let's turn a MP3 player into a phone.
What are your like Tyler Cowen calls it the production function? What makes you different? Is I can see a some background from the strategy consulting, just like synthesizing ideas and knowing how to get to the what matters. Like I think that is like one of the best skills you can learn in consulting, and why I think it's so valuable in today's world. But also, I think there's probably some other secret weapon around your curiosity. Like, how do you think about your skill stack?
Yeah, I think that Idea Soup is mainly history, then a little bit of science and psychology too. And I'm not a historian, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a psychologist, right? I don't know the most about these topics. There are people out there that know so much more than me. So if I had to say, like, why do people watch me? I think it's two pieces. I think the first piece is, I think one of my real skills is taking something that is, complex and big and large, and boiling it down in terms that make it very understandable and digestible and contextual, right? That's super challenging, especially when I'm doing 1 minute history videos on TikTok or whatever, because I have to cut out so much. And I'm always, people attack me in the comments, you left out this and you oversimplified this. And it's so tough because these decisions are like, it's like choosing children, right? But fundamentally it's like, I'd rather give people this core that they can take away, and they can always go learn more complex later. And the second piece is I think that I had this moment in when I was in London, right? I used to live in London. I lived in London for 3 years, and I was just like walking down the street late night, had a few too many beers or whatever, right? And I was walking home, and it was dark. I was walking across the bridge where you see St. Paul's Cathedral at the end of it, and I'm seeing like London, this ancient city, older than England itself, right? And I see St. Paul's, and like I just like I start crying, right?
Wow, yeah.
And I'm just so moved by like all the history, the majesty, the beautiful architecture, and I realized like, oh, this is what makes me good at Idea Soup. Is I just love this stuff so much, and I find history so crazy and weird and fascinating that I think that that's contagious. And I guess like if I had a mission, it's not necessarily to educate people, it's just to make them more interested. It's to make them go like, wait, how did Romans wipe their asses? That's crazy, right? Like to me, it's like it's not just like dates and numbers and this and that. It's all the like the history is so crazy and wild. And I think that exactly. It's like I'm just such a crazy nerd.
I think caring is so underrated in today's world. It's almost become a like very normal thing to be like, whatever, right? This deep nihilistic strand. And I think what creating and writing has enabled me to, it basically nudges you into, is like, I have to care about things, and I have to treat things with a certain I don't even know what the word is, but just like gentleness of like, okay, I'm gonna try to not fuck things up and try to add something useful in like a very positive and earnest way, which I definitely get that vibe from yours as well.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, kind of go back to what I said before earlier. Like, caring is also something that is very vulnerable. The moment you care, you're vulnerable. You're attached to a topic or an idea or a pursuit, and yeah, I think our world discourages that. I think it's so easy for folks to actively say, "I don't care," because if you don't care, you can't be argued with, you can't be attacked, you can't be criticized. No, I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think people are attracted to folks that care, right? The age of the try hard is ending, I hope. Or the age of, words like try hard, right? Like, what a wild word. Trying hard is amazing. Like, try hard should be a compliment. Like, you are trying so hard.
Well, I think the root of that, though, is that people are trying hard towards things they see as pointless, right? I think if we think of trying hard in a large organization, we think of somebody that's kind of trying to like please others, play politics, and like get ahead.
Yeah, totally.
And it's not attached to anything, but that's more of a symptom of kind of specialization in work. I always bring it back.
No.
But
I think you're totally right there. I think you're totally right.
we cannot leave the listeners hanging. People want to know how Romans wiped their asses.
Oh, so they they use these things that were these like I mean in a lot of ways the Romans are very clean. They had bathhouses, this, that. But they would wipe their ass with these kind of like long sticks that had like loofah brushes at the end. They used a type of natural sponge, and they would sit in these big buckets of vinegar in like mutual bathrooms, and you would kind of like share the brush or pass it around. But they did put it in a bucket of vinegar, which like considering germ theory wouldn't be invented for another 2,000 years, like not bad. All right, not bad. I'll give it to you. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah. If you want more content like that, check out Idea Soup on TikTok and Instagram. You have a lot of great stuff. Like I went down a rabbit hole before. You were talking about this idea of traditional Christmas and how traditional Christmas was just a drunken brawl where rich people were basically forced to open up their homes and like get the public drunk and feed them.
Oh yeah, I mean they banned Christmas. Like Protestants, I think England banned Christmas for like 100 years, something like that. Like, so you want to talk about a war on Christmas? Yeah, they fully banned it because it was so rowdy and so over the top, and kind of what we associate with Halloween today used to look a lot more like Christmas actually.
How are you feeling? Like, I love this vibe from you. That's just like, you seem like you have a deep concern for your fellow human, and like, how are you channeling that or thinking about channeling that just in like creating a video? Because like you literally have the chance to reach millions, right? With like some videos can reach millions of people. How do you think about both that responsibility and like what you're orienting towards?
Yeah. So, so I think, in my mind, the way that like I try to, I guess, make the world a better place, if that, I wouldn't call myself an activist. I don't think I don't think I'm a huge net benefit for the world, but if I had a thesis, it's that, education really does work and education really does matter. And I think one of the crises we have today is a crisis of education, where we are raised on a early 20th century education system, if that, right? We are raised on a very industrial age education system, one size fits all, that is so wildly irrelevant for the average person these days that I think that kids are coming out of high school wildly undereducated on what they need to actually be educated on, and oftentimes turned off from learning because they've spent all their time, doing trigonometry and this and that, learning the wrong things. And so my favorite comment I ever get is, I hate history. I hate a history class, but now because of you, I'm getting interested in it. And I'm reading this book or this or that. That's my favorite comment in the world. I get it all the time, where you think these folks were taught wrong. They were given an incorrect introduction to it. And it causes people to kind of reject whole fields. And I think that one of the biggest challenges we have today is just this rejection of nuance. Just culturally, we just cannot handle nuance in any real way. And history is the most incredible field for wrestling with nuance. It's the most incredible field for wrestling with nuance. And I think that for folks to paint history is not just a jumping off point for politics or to direct our anger. Like, yes, we look back at the past and horrible things happen and good things happen too. And you put all that together and you get this crazy, bizarre, disgusting, beautiful mess of humanity. And that is now what we learn from, because that's who we are. We're the same primates. We have the same brains. Our DNA has not materially changed in 500 years as our world has radically, radically shifted. And so we can learn a tremendous amount from it. I think that when we talk about building new institutions, I do think that the average kid today is served way better by the internet than by his classroom, almost certainly, across the board. right?
Every college student I talk to, I always ask them, how do you actually learn things? They say, well, I go to class. Sometimes I just skip class, and then I go to YouTube and figure out how to actually do the thing, or
Yeah, 100%.
Khan Academy. Um,
Yeah.
do you see yourself playing a role in the future of education?
I think so. Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, fundamentally, I'm an entertainer, but I think first and foremost, I am an educator. And I think that uh, there's this quote. I'm sure I'm gonna misquote exactly, but it's like there's two ways to build a boat. One is to gather men together and get wood and planks and this and that, and create plans to the boat. And the other is to find a crowd and teach them to long for the sea, right? And it's like I kind of view my role as the latter, where
Huh.
if you spark that curiosity in people and that passion from an early age, that's really tough to snuff out, right? I think that a lot of kids get set on a path very, very early on, by age 15, based on, are they curious self-learners,
Yeah.
or do they hate school and they want to stop learning? And the earlier you can intervene, the better. But I also think it's never too late. I think don't I think sometimes I love the classics. I love reading classics, but like, maybe don't give kids the Scarlet Pimpernel and have them hate reading. Give them some awesome book that's new but really well written,
Yeah.
and they love it. And you start with what's the movie with the kids killing each other. I'm blanking out. Not mocking. Hunger Games. You start with Hunger Games, right? Yeah,
That's a
go read the
beautiful
Hunger
story.
Games, right? Okay, yeah, go read the Hunger Games, and then you develop a thirst for reading, and that
Yeah.
habit then carries you forward in life. So
Yeah, it's funny. I actually developed this at like 21, like
interesting.
very late. I read the book Freakonomics, and then I literally was like
Oh,
freaking
cool.
out. I'm like, oh my god, they flipped everything I knew about these four topics. Like, where can I find more books about this? I think I read like 5 Malcolm Gladwell books within the next few weeks, but that just like opened my world, and like it's really just been a thirst for curiosity since. And yeah, I wonder, like, if I hadn't stumbled upon the right books, like, would I have just kind of like stumbled? I don't know. I'm sure I would have. There's so much information now. I would have stumbled into stuff, but it's funny how those things happen.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is, and a lot of times it is kind of a poison pill that gets it in. Like,
Yeah.
Freakonomics is ostensibly edutainment, right? I mean, it's analytical, right? And there's a lot of merit to it, and the work they did was really interesting. But fundamentally, they understood that a huge component of teaching is entertaining, and
Right.
Freakonomics was fascinating and goofy and off the walls, and that works, right? That is the poison pill that leads folks onto more complex things, I think, um, or even just more of the same, right? Malcolm Gladwell is another great educator, entertainer, I think.
Definitely. So I'd love to close with a little bit about your path and how this experience is for you. You've recently left full-time employment to pursue this, and I'm wondering, one, like, do you value the corporate experience you had? Do you wish you had left earlier? How do you think about that? And then we'll dive into how you're kind of like, what does it feel like to be an independent, self-employed person out there right now?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm happy to spend a little time on this.
Yeah,
I don't have a hard stop or anything. So yeah, I worked in the corporate world. I was in analytics consulting for 5 years, doing data analytics and data science, and I found it tremendously valuable. And I don't wish I had left earlier. I think I was there for just the right amount of time. Like 4 or 5 years felt perfect, where I
Yeah.
really got a good feel for the corporate world, and especially because it was in consulting, so I was able to jump around between several companies, but then more importantly, see that like 3,000-mile view that I think has given me such an insight into corporate culture, and like, therefore, like middle-class American culture, right? Like middle and upper-class American culture. It's like,
Yeah.
it is a direct pipe, in a lot of ways. And it was so fascinating to me. I definitely left. Disillusioned is the wrong word, and cynical is not even quite the right word either. But like, corporations are so the biggest thing that I think every consultant realizes this is like going in, you start a little bit idealistic and oh, I want to do big things. And even
And
before consulting,
transform the
I was like a
organization.
yeah, I was like a documentary filmmaker before the work. So I had a film in South by Southwest before I ever had a corporate job in consulting. So I had a bit of a creative background, but
Yeah.
you know, I realized I was like, I call it the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of people at any company would burn their company to the ground for a 20% pay raise.
It's so
like, like, like mission statements, values, whatever, all that stuff is bullshit. It's
the
out the window,
80-20
right?
rule. Oh my God. I'm definitely gonna borrow this and give you the hat tip.
And it's just I think the biggest surprise every consultant experiences is like, oh, politics is not a part of like corporate culture. It's
It's
everything. It's
it's the
everything.
part. Yeah, power in
It's the
politics
part,
is
yeah.
it.
And if they get work done and succeed as an organization, it's usually by accident,
Hmm.
right? Like as a byproduct of all this politics happening. And so I think understanding that and seeing how work is not rewarded in most organizations. The appearance of work is, right? Like signaling mechanisms on who's going to be a success in the future, who this. That's why folks fail upwards and this and that, and our mechanisms for understanding performance are terrible. Our mechanisms for understanding who's going to do well in the future are terrible.
Did you
But I think that it definitely.
did you ever forget that you were a creator? Like, did you own like I'm this corporate person and then get in the mode of like I'm gonna build out this long consulting career?
Yeah, there was definitely a. So I started off super creative, right? I came into school. I went to USC in California. Came in as a theater major, right? Then I switched to communication, and then I switched to business. I just like fully sold out. Like some crazy stuff happened in college. Like my ex girlfriend had cancer, and so I was like spent a year with her, and her family didn't have a ton of money, and I didn't have any money at the time. So all of a sudden I was like, okay, money's the most important thing in the world. Like gotta get money, gotta switch to business, go
Yeah.
accomplish something. And I loved studying business, right? I really did. My ex-girlfriend lived, by the way, she's doing great now. Yeah, I loved studying business, right? And so then I got into the entertainment industry for a year or two, pivoted back, got into consulting, right? Moved to India. And yeah, there was a period, maybe a year or two in, where I was like, you know what? Like, I'm happy. I'm making good money. I'm watching Netflix every night. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is it, right? Maybe I was never meant to be a creator. That's, endless work for just dissatisfaction. Here I am, got a decent salary. I'm just
Mm.
gonna watch Netflix and enjoy my, Uber Eats. I don't think Uber Eats was even around then. Enjoy my
Walking to
dinner
pick
for
up
free.
takeout.
Yeah, exactly.
But then what?
Yeah, then I just like, I don't know. There's just hunger inside of me, I guess.
Yeah.
There's just something in me that just wanted more. And I started writing, and that's where it started. And I was like very convinced, like, this will stay a hobby, this will stay a hobby, this will stay a hobby. Um, and I really, maybe that helped. Maybe it helped take the stakes off for me, because when you say, I'm going to be a full-time content creator, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I think it's so much pressure. Some people never get off the ground. By keeping the stakes low at first, I could continually create, even if it was crap. So I'd put out a lot of crap, and then eventually it got good. Um, and then yeah, and then I just kind of started to see that the world was changing, that social media afforded a lot of opportunities that weren't there before. I had an article go viral, made some money from that, and I was like, oh wait, I can get paid for my ideas. Wait, this is different. So yeah, I definitely had a moment where it was like I did not consider myself a creator anymore. I considered myself like, oh, I used to be this artistic guy, but that's not me anymore. Now I'm just a corporate guy, and I want to just rise to the top of this world, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that's one of the dangers of the corporate world is that you become overly identified as a worker, and I think I was certainly in this until I went through a health crisis, and then I kind of had this space,
Interesting.
and I didn't have this like latent creative endeavor that I'd kind of abandoned, but like writing kind of emerged into that gap, and is like, I'm here. The writing was like, we're not leaving. You're going to want to keep doing this. And then it just kind of like slowly expanded. And it wasn't like This is why I have such a hard time describing my leap, is that there was just a deep sense of like knowing it was time. There was no like moment, there was no plan. It was a terrible plan. It was financially poorly executed, but it was just like time when the creative stuff took over. Was that similar for you, or was the like explosion on TikTok just too much where it was like, well, this is like gonna make me more than my full-time job now?
No, no. I mean, so it's so first actually, do you ever miss it? Do you ever miss
Yeah.
just fully your identity is the corporate job?
Yeah, I was happy. I've always been a pretty happy person. Yeah, I think there's a certain naivety of youth, in which I was happy with kind of the like pleasure and fun, and to be honest, like the community oriented around young 20s corporate world is really fun. I
Hmm.
think I started to struggle in my early 30s when a lot of that community drifted away. People didn't orient around fun and being in the city and always being around their friends. It was more around
Mm,
like
totally,
moved to the house, started my family, and doing those things. So I felt a
totally.
bit more lost at that age. But I miss just showing up and being part of a team. The thing I always remind myself though is like you can never sustain those teams very long. Like I was on great teams probably 5 or 6 different times, but they never lasted longer than like 6 months.
Yeah.
People either move on or go do their thing, and I miss that. Like some mentors who just like you're in the grind with for 3 months straight and working on a really hard project, and they're really pushing you and making you uncomfortable, but also like caring about you as a person. I was lucky to have a number of those experiences. That's really hard to replace as a solo creator. Like someone like me and you, we could say like, hey, let's try to find a way to collaborate, but like, I know it's just gonna be freaking hard. And it probably, maybe it will happen, but it's just gonna be, even if you did one thing, it's gonna be hard to sustain that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I still miss the teamwork for sure. And I almost liken it to people who have kind of like left a religion almost, where
Yeah,
you had answers. They may not have been the right answers, but you had answers. And it's really comforting having answers. And once you leave that, there are no answers. There was never a moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm making so much money, I have to quit now. So actually, I kind of took a leap of faith. So I quit my job in February, just before just before the pandemic. Perfect timing. And when I quit my job, I had done like one brand deal maybe. I had made very, very little money from social media. My writing had made, a couple $1,000 or whatever, but like nothing crazy. Um, so I saved my money. That's the one good thing about working a corporate job. I tell that to a lot of creative people. If you can create a
yeah,
financial buffer for yourself, you can increase your risk tolerance tremendously. So I saved up like 2 years 2 years of expenses of like pretty, minimal expenses, not like,
yeah,
big house or anything, but like 2 years of expenses. And I was like, I'm going to give myself 2 years, just pursue this dream all out. Um, and now I'm in a place where, I pay my bills every month with the money I make from content creation. I've had a couple months that have been as good as my old job, right? But it's not it's not
yeah.
regular. And so no, it wasn't this like there's so much money in it, I now need to go pursue this. And I think folks who wait for that sometimes miss the ball. I think sometimes you do have to jump a little bit earlier than it feels like you should. Um,
Yeah.
that being said, I believe in the side hustle tremendously. I've been reflecting lately how, like, in some ways, I was actually more productive. I
Right.
produced
Yeah.
more content when I was working full time because I felt so pressured. I was in a pressure cooker. I would
Yeah.
walk to work.
That structure and routine is underrated.
So underrated. I would walk to work every day, and I had a 15-minute walk to the tube station to take the tube to my job. Right. I was like, oh, I don't have time to make TikToks, but I have to make TikToks. What am I going to do? So on that 15-minute walk, I would record my TikTok. On my 40-minute tube ride, I would edit my TikTok, sitting down crammed between like 7 other people.
Wow.
And by the time I got to work, my TikTok for the day would be finished. And that was how like 80% of my early TikToks were made. Just like clawing out that time out of the day when I was already super busy.
Yeah, it's that tension of kind of having this thing that matters to you, and it's almost like an FU to your job. It's like, I will do this. You can't take this from
Totally.
me.
Totally. And now, like, I've been thinking a lot lately that I want to rekindle that a little bit because it's so easy to be like, oh, you know what? I'll take a little longer lunch. Oh, my girlfriend's watching Survivor. Okay, I'll go watch like a Survivor rerun. Like, and all of a sudden, a couple hours, okay, I should get back to work. Like that intensity, you have to manufacture it artificially for yourself
Yeah.
outside of those environments of intense accountability. And I really thrive in structure and accountability. So I keep trying to generate that for myself. And some days I'm better than others, but it's absolutely a challenge of being a solo creator.
Yeah, and what does success mean to you now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I heard someone, um, I heard someone write the other day. Maybe you retweeted it or something. I don't know. I heard
Maybe.
someone write that there's only there's only three levels of wealth that matter. There is there is oh god, what is it? Oh yeah, it was number one, bills are covered, right?
Yeah,
Comfortable life.
right.
Number two is when you walk into a restaurant, you don't need to look at the price tags on the menu. And number three is when you travel, you don't need to look at the price tags. Those are the only three levels of wealth that matter. I
Huh.
was like, I was like, there's something to that. So, like, um, but all that being said, I think it's easy to say, but I know a lot of very wealthy people who live very poor lives
Yeah.
because they are either very time poor or risk poor. Uh, and so to me, success is a combination of, for me personally, um, creating content people care about, right, and just being heard. Um, Number two is definitely freedom. I really value freedom of location and geography. I've been to 36 countries now. I love traveling. I really value freedom of location and freedom of schedule. And I think that I've gotten to the point in life where I do value that a little bit more than raw
Yeah.
money. While I would like to get to a point where I'm really, not looking at the price tag for travel or or that. I also know people who are, draw these prisons around themselves and they won't fly international unless it's first class, and so they
Wow.
don't make it abroad this year or whatever, right? Like I know a lot of people that because they need the best of everything,
Yeah.
they can only actually do something fun once every 3 years or whatever, right? So I think that the
Yeah,
hedonic treadmill
the
turns on very
transition
quickly.
for me it's actually surprised me because I think I used to care. I made enough money where I didn't have to look at the price tags for restaurants
Yeah.
in New York. Um, the surprising thing that happened is I realized that going to restaurants didn't add a ton to my life when
Yeah.
I had less money because I couldn't go to them anymore. Um, so yeah, my second level is really that like time wealth. And when you have more time, you're willing to actually spend more time on inconvenience in a weird way. So like if you have time, you spending 3 hours to make a meal is no longer something that's in tension with anything. Um, it's pretty beautiful, and I think the hardest thing I have is almost like leaving a religion is explaining that to other people because people
Mm,
constantly have questions like, "Don't you want a house? If you have kids, what about X? If you do this in the future, aren't you worried about X?" And it's like, I know it's clear you're worried about those things, but I, they're not my starting points, and
mm,
it's really
yeah.
hard to. Um, it's surprising. I'm in a place that's very unexpected from where I started 4 years ago, and I really thought I used to care about things um, that it turns out are more flexible than I thought.
Yeah. No, I think that's really valid. I think that's really valid. And and yeah, and then also I guess some element of happiness, satisfaction, right? I think that's illusory, but there's something to that too. I I don't want to say that every digital nomad is happy because I do think that like I don't want that to be like the tone of this conversation, because I feel like I hear that everywhere, and it's almost like cliche now, this kind of 4-hour work week cult. And it's not quite that simple, I think, but and I don't think the corporate world is like a hellhole either. I do think there's a lot of happy people who live corporate lives, because there's an element of, financial stability does increase happiness up to a point. Absolutely. But man, when I was in consulting, like I would just be in meetings with all these, VPs and senior VPs and, people that are at the, C-suite people that were at the top of their game. And like, they are just so miserable, man. They're just so miserable. You see it in their eyes.
Yeah.
And you're just like, and it feels like they're just chasing something and they don't even know why. Right. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of folks,
I think that's what the digital nomads have, is they kind of haven't gone far enough. Like they've realized that is not worth it. Right. But they're merely escaping that. I think where I've kind of landed, I've kind of discovered I'm a little more traditional and normie than I expected. Basically because seeing myself in tension with a lot of these nomad types who tend to reject everything just out of default. Whereas like, for me, it's like, okay, the things I want are actually the same things that a lot of people have accidentally through the default path. It just means I'm going to have to be more conscious about creating them. How do I insert myself in a community where people are engaged and involved with each other? How do I create a stability such that I can attract others that want to invest in relationships and things like that? Whereas like, this nomad culture, there's definitely a streak of this like hedonistic nihilism, which is like, do whatever makes you happy, and if anyone makes you uncomfortable, leave them behind.
Yeah.
It's like,
and there's
no.
Yeah, and there's even an element of like they're kind of hopping off one treadmill and getting on another one sometimes, where it goes from I need to have all the money in the world and get a house to I got to travel to all these countries and take this off. And I'm in Africa, yes, I need to go to Africa now. And like all of a sudden you're just substituting one thing that fills the void, another thing that fills the void. And I've seen that a lot with digital nomad types. I think we're going to continue to see that as work really radically reshapes the next few years.
I think the digital nomad path is radically underrated for somebody like my age, in like early to mid 30s, because one, physically,
it's actually way easier. It's actually way easier, I think.
Physically, you can't really party all the time.
Yeah, true.
Two, you like don't want to be. You want like a more like we're in an apartment we're renting for a month, and this is like a stable home base for us rather than like we don't want to be traveling every 3 days. Yeah. And it just puts you in tension with living in different places and makes you really just think about all these deeper questions, which I think make my life better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people in their mid 30s have so much more in savings. I think where I see digital nomads really go wrong is they go a little too early. They don't quite have a good enough income stream, and they're really, really struggling, really pinching pennies. Which, don't get me wrong, it's its own adventure too.
Yeah, right.
I like drove around the country with no money. Like I've been a lot of places when I didn't have money. But I think a lot of people in their mid 30s with no kids can take a year off and travel and come back and have no impact on their career, no impact on their money, really, right? Like if they have, if they're saving up to buy a house or something, a year of traveling is actually nothing compared to buying a house in Escondido or whatever, right? And so I totally agree that's underrated. And and even going digital nomad, because a lot of people are more established careers, which means they can go remote more easily because they've been in the same place for 10 years. So I totally agree. I do think, remote work is going to reshape our electorate pretty rapidly.
Yeah. I'm very much in a state of not knowing. There's definitely, it'd be easy for me to just be like, here's how things are going to happen. I've been writing about these things for years, but it's like, I'm just kind of like sitting and observing these things. It's clear something is afoot in terms of how people are working and living, but I'm not really sure what direction it's going to go in. And it's really exciting to watch and see what will emerge. And I hope people are more easily able to build life paths that give them meaning. And I think that's what excites me.
Yeah, I hope so too, man. I hope so too. I don't know though. Like if
True.
If you
You
if you put
see, you've
you
studied
put
history. You're here.
if you
You're
put
here to
people
add
if you
the
put people
sober
like if
caution.
you like putting people in charge of making their own meeting is also a type of curse. Like I
It's really hard.
I'm
I'm
I'm not
doing it
sure
and it's very hard.
if we move to this world where 80% of the population are gig workers and have their own companies, and there's this big middle class of creators that a lot of people theorize right now. I'm not sure if like the net happiness
No,
is going to be larger than when everyone just showed up at Kodak and
no,
filled out paperwork. Like,
I totally agree. And that, I mean, I have a hypothesis around that. I call it the accidental meaning hypothesis, which was that basically the people that accidentally went to work at GE and Kodak and General Dynamics like got this accidental meaning because the systems were designed around it. Um,
yeah, I think that's real. And I think that sometimes when you ask people to make their own meaning, it leads for
well,
them, seeking meaning in unhealthy places. Like, I think, like, how much of this is responsible for the rise of conspiracy theories, for example? To
oh
me,
yeah,
conspiracy theory is this perfect example.
on
They
all
exist in a
sides,
meaning vacuum,
right?
right? When there is a vacuum of meaning, everyone loves conspiracy theories because suddenly it gives order and meaning to the world
Right.
very, very quickly.
Yeah, it's and I mean this is what I I don't think people should. I think people need to be more open-eyed that you probably have to put a little more effort into designing your meaning than you did 30 years ago. And I think
Yeah,
that's um, the thing I try to get to. But yeah, it's freaking hard and like digital nomad life isn't the answer either because I mean me and my wife, we have families from two different countries, and trying to design around that is just, it's not a normal um, thing to solve. There's no good answers.
totally, totally. Even just like, where do you get your mail becomes no problem.
Send it
Right?
to my mom, and then she takes pictures.
Yeah, yeah.
But awesome. Well, this feels like a good spot to end. I think we covered some interesting stuff. I think through your lens of creating educational material, you have this very unique lens on how kind of social trends are shaping and some of the positive things you can do with it. So keep up the good work. I'm excited to follow your journey and see where it takes you. And yeah, another person on the pathless path helping me make sense of my own meaning as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man.